President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, now on the floor of the Senate, is the most dangerous piece of legislation in the modern history of our country. It is a gift to the billionaire class while causing massive pain for low-income and working-class Americans. Actually, though, Mr. President, I'm wrong. This is not a gift to the billionaire class. They paid for it. This bill is an absolute reflection of a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. And when billionaires spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to elect a president or a senator or a member of Congress, they're not making that investment just for the fun of it. They want something in return, and this legislation, big time, is what they are getting in return. So what is in this bill that they invested in? Well, if you are in the top 1%, you and the class you represent will receive a $975 billion tax break. $975 billion tax break at a time when the richest people in this country have never, ever had it so good. Further, this is really quite unbelievable. If you are among the wealthiest 0.2%, not talking about 1%, talking about the top 0.2%, you will be able to pay zero taxes on your $30 million inheritance. So all of you folks out there who are waiting to inherit at least $30 million, today is a good day for you. Collectively, you will receive approximately $211 billion in tax breaks for the top 0.2%. Congratulations, you hit the jackpot. If you are a large corporation and you want to throw workers out on the street and replace them with artificial intelligence, or maybe you want to shift your profits to the Cayman Islands or other tax havens, you are going to get a $918 billion tax break. Congratulations to the CEOs of large, profitable corporations. But while the rich and large corporations make out like bandits in this bill, what does it do for low-income and working families? Well, let me say a few words on that. If you are concerned about health care, which I suspect that everybody in the world is, this bill throws over 16 million people off the health insurance they have, according to the Congressional Budget Office, by cutting Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by over $1.1 trillion. In other words, the top 1% getting a $975 billion tax break, and that is coming directly by throwing 16 million people off of the health insurance they have. This bill, for the first time, forces millions of Medicaid recipients who make as little as $16,000 a year to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor's office. So what is the impact of all of that? You throw 16 million people off health care. You force people who don't have any money pay a $35 copayment. So what's the impact of it? Well, this is not my view. This is what the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania determined based on a study that they did. And this is the result. And it is almost so horrific, so grotesque, that it is difficult to speak about. But they estimate that if this bill goes through with all of these cuts in health care, if 16 million people are thrown off of the insurance they have, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily every year. 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily in order to give tax breaks to billionaires who don't need them. In other words, this bill is literally a death sentence for low-income and working-class people. Further, if this legislation is enacted, rural hospitals all over the country, and I come from one of the most rural states in America, rural hospitals are already struggling. But when you make massive cuts to Medicaid, many of them are going to shut down or not be able to provide the level of services they do today. In other words, this bill would be a disaster for rural America. It would also make massive cuts to community health centers and nursing homes who are very heavily dependent upon Medicaid funding. Bottom line is that this legislation is the most significant attack on the health care needs of the American people in our country's history. We already have, as everybody knows, a health care system which is broken, which is dysfunctional, and instead of addressing it, instead of doing what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people, we are throwing 16 million people off the health insurance that they have. But it's not just health care. The future of America rests with our children. And yet, in a nation which now has the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, this bill wipes out nutrition assistance for millions of hungry kids in America. We are literally taking food out of the mouths of hungry kids to give tax breaks to Mr. Bezos and Mr. Musk and Mr. Zuckerberg and the other multi-billionaires. If we understand that if we're going to compete effectively in the global economy, we need to have the best education system in the world, this bill makes $350 billion in cuts in education, with the result that working-class kids will find it much harder to get the higher education they need to succeed in life. If you are concerned about the existential threat of climate change, and we're seeing heat waves right now all over the world, this bill decimates investments in energy efficiency and sustainable energy like wind and solar, and moves us in exactly the wrong direction with regard to energy. If you are concerned about our role in never-ending wars, this bill makes a bad situation even worse by handing out another $150 billion to the Pentagon, a 15% increase in an already bloated Pentagon budget. We don't have enough money to feed hungry children. We don't have enough money to make sure that people continue to have the health care that they need. Don't have enough money to make sure the kids can get a decent education. But somehow the military-industrial complex is going to get another $150 billion, 15% increase. Mr. President, in my view, nobody in the Senate or the House should vote for this legislation, and I applaud all of the Democrats for voting against it, and I want to congratulate two Republicans, Senator Paul and Senator Tillis, for voting against it for different reasons, by the way, than I have. But I do find it interesting, and it does tell us where we are as a nation today, that when one of those senators, Senator Tillis, voted against it because he thought it was not a good bill for the people of his home state, North Carolina, suddenly the President of the United States went after him in a very, very vicious way. And today he announced that he will not be seeking re-election. So it appears now that the Republican Party has really become a party of the cult of the individual. The only thing you have to do now as a Republican is say, I agree with President Trump. I love President Trump. President Trump is right all of the time. Hey, that's all you got to do now to be a good Republican. There was a day when Republicans and Democrats understood that they were elected by their constituents. Yeah, you want to work with the president of your own party, nothing to do about that. But there was an understanding that you were also elected to represent your constituents and not simply pay homage and bow down to every wish and whim of the president. Mr. President, during the vote-a-rama, I will be offering several amendments, which I hope will win support. Number one, at a time when 22% of our nation's seniors are trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year, my first amendment would fundamentally improve their lives in two significant ways. Number one, it would cut the price of prescription drugs under Medicare in half by making sure that our nation's seniors do not pay any more than Europeans or Canadians pay for the same exact drugs. And number two, with those savings, we're going to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing. In other words, instead of throwing people off of health care, we're going to expand Medicare to provide a number of services that seniors desperately need and want. Secondly, Mr. President, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, my second amendment would eliminate the $211 billion estate tax for the top 0.2% that is included in this bill. They get a top 2%, as I mentioned, $211 billion tax rate. That is insane. We're going to get rid of that. And lastly, at a time when we spend more on the military than the next 9 nations combined, at a time when the Pentagon cannot account for trillions of dollars in assets, we are going to end the provision that allows the Pentagon to receive another $150 billion. Bottom line, Mr. President, is this country faces many crises: high rate of childhood poverty, kids going hungry, education system in deep trouble, healthcare system completely broken. And in virtually every single area, this bill takes us in precisely the wrong direction. When the wealthiest people in this country have never, ever had it so good, it is totally insane to be offering them $1 trillion in tax breaks so that we could cut health care, education, and nutrition. This bill is not what the American people want, and I hope very much we can defeat it. Thank you very much, Mr. President.